Gen 3 has some of the greatest competitive Pokemon designs in the entire series. Pokemon like Swampert, Metagross, and Salamence are iconic and define this generation in a very positive way. But on the flip side, Gen 3 also has some of the worst and most nonsensical Pokemon designs in the series. Not every Pokemon is supposed to thrive in competitive. That's part of the charm of these games, is that there is a wide variety of different power levels. But some of these Pokemon don't do anything unique and have traits that don't match their visuals. They have very limited tools and just feel lazily thrown together. They feel like they don't stand out in any meaningful way. Many have asked me how I would fix some of these Pokemon to make them functional in the Gen 3 OU environment. Not necessarily amazing or competitively central, but at least buffed enough so that they can do something unique. Now, I want to make something very clear. If a Pokemon has any viable role in OU whatsoever, I'm not going to include them here. So that means Glalie, who is often considered one of the worst Gen 3 Pokemon, is not going to be here, because Glalie has a genuine competitive niche as an aggressive spikes setter with a unique set of traits, including a good speed tier for a lead, stab ice beam, access to spikes, taunt and explosion, and even just enough bulk and neutral typing to live important hits in lead matchups. So Glalie is perfectly fine. Glalie doesn't need to be fixed. It already does something. The same is true of Sableye and Camerupt and Roselia. All of these Pokemon have viable reasons to exist and do something in OU and have been used in OU by high-level players before. Therefore, why fix them? They're fine as they are, in my opinion. For my theoretical buffs to these Pokemon, I'm going to nudge them very slightly towards viability. I don't want them to be broken or anything. There's a common trend in ROM hacks and stuff to buff the crappy Pokemon to an absurd extent, like Delibird, giving Delibird high stats and powerful abilities. I'm not going to do that. Part of the flavor is that these Pokemon are, obtained in the middle of the game and they're not supposed to be very powerful. But I at least want them to feel more unique, and that's what I'm going to try and achieve today. Now first, why don't we start with the most tragic Pokemon ever created, Tropius. Tropius is a bizarre Pokemon, because visually this looks like it should be powerful. It is large, it is imposing, it is quite frankly a genius visual design that captures the imagination. I certainly was excited to see this when I first played the Gen 3 games. Then when you catch it, you notice that, wait a minute, this thing has less to offer than Butterfree. That's actually serious. Butterfree is literally more competitively viable in OU than Tropius is, which doesn't seem to make sense when you put them side by side. Tropius has atrocious stats. I guess its bulk is okay with 99 HP, 83 defense, and 87 special defense, but it has non-existent attacking stats. This doesn't look like it should have 68 attack, but it does. And its speed is a measly 51. So this guy is slow, frail, and it doesn't even do any damage. So what does it do? Well, nothing. Tropius does nothing. It has the ability Chlorophyll, which is not a good fit whatsoever. Chlorophyll grants double speed in the sun, and you're already so slow that it's barely much of a difference anyway. Plenty of things are still going to outspeed you, even in the sun. You have Solar Beam off the back of an impressive 72 special attack stat, just kidding. So Tropius is a very disappointing Pokemon. They gave this very little to do. Its ability makes no sense on it. It doesn't work to its strengths at all, if there even were any strengths. So how would I change Tropius to be more functional? Well, what I think is interesting about Tropius is that it is a grass flying type with Leech Seed. And the reason I think this is interesting is because Leech Seed is a really strong move. Leech Seed is one of the safest things to use in Gen 3, in fact, because it gets guaranteed value a lot of the time, which is rare in Gen 3. This is before moves like Scald existed, and Stealth Rock, and other free clicks. Leech Seed is a temporary damage over time effect that will deal damage to the opponent every turn and restore HP to the user every turn as well. So it damages them a little bit, heals you a little bit. It's a very powerful move. The problem with Leech Seed is that the common Pokemon Celebi is completely immune to it, and most Pokemon that get Leech Seed are grass types that can't threaten Celebi very much. They might carry a neutral hidden power Fire, but that's not going to do much to Celebi usually if it's defensive or if it has Calm Mind. But what's interesting about Tropius is that it's also a flying type, meaning that it has super effective flying type damage against Celebi. This is actually a pretty cool quality, but unfortunately Tropius is not good at taking advantage of this quality because of how slow and frail it is. It can barely hold its own against Celebi. Celebi can easily 1v1 it, no matter what the Celebi set is really. So how can we make Tropius a bit better in this interaction? I think a simple way to do so would be to buff its speed stat. I would propose giving Tropius a speed stat of 90. This would at least allow Tropius to more easily outrun defensive Celebi sets, which would make it a lot better at taking advantage of the Leech Seed plus Flying Stab combo. You may think it's a bit much of a buff, but honestly 90 base speed is not even that good. It's not going to save this Pokemon's life that much. It just make it a bit better at taking advantage of its unique combination of Leech Seed and Flying Stab, in my opinion. This would also make Tropius a bit better at offensively threatening fighting types, because it could actually outrun them a little bit more reliably. So you could use Tropius as a switch-in against fighting type attacks from Breloom, or Medicham, or Heracross. And once again, even in these matchups, you still wouldn't be that good because you are frail and they all have coverage for you, and sometimes would outrun you too. But it would at least give you a chance at being okay against them. I would also be generous here, and I would give Tropius a buff to its attack from 68 to base 80. This is not even that much of an attack stat, but it's a bit more than its pathetic 68, which doesn't even line up with its visual. This guy looks like it should have high attack, and it doesn't. So I think that's more than fair to give this 80 base attack. The final thing I would do to give Tropius a bit more value is giving it the ability Intimidate. This would actually be a really significant buff, as Intimidate is one of the best abilities in the game, simply lowering the enemy's attack stat on switch-in. I think this would be thematically appropriate. Tropius is an intimidating looking creature. It's a big dinosaur that is roaring at you. This is not a stretch to give this Intimidate. And I think this would make it a lot better at checking those fighting types that I just mentioned. That's part of the role of flying types in Gen 3, is that they're a great switch into fighting type wall breakers. Gyarados and Salamence both have Intimidate and are flying type, making them great switch-ins to fighting types, but I think Tropius would stand out compared to those two because of its more utility role. It is not nearly as good on the stats side, it cannot be much of a win condition, but it has Leech Seed, and it has that grass flying typing, which is different defensively. With all these traits, I don't even think Tropius would be anywhere near OU status or that good, but it would have some stuff to do. It would kind of be similar to Jumpluff, who is sometimes seen, Jumpluff also being a grass flying type with Leech Seed. Jumpluff stands out because of its access to Encore and its high speed stat outrunning many common Pokemon. If Tropius had Intimidate, a bit of a higher speed stat, and a serviceable amount of damage from its stab flying type attacks, I think that would be enough to give Tropius a little bit more merit in OU and allow it to stand out a bit more in a way that I think is thematically appropriate. Maybe the 90 base speed looks a bit too much for Tropius, but let's be honest, Pokemon stats are inconsistent all the time. You could dream up a reason for Tropius to be 90 base speed. It's not even that fast, by the way, but the guy's got wings. You could imagine this guy running fast. I don't know. It's not that crazy. Please don't be up in arms at me giving this 90 speed, which is not even a very high buff. Up next we have Mightyena, a false sort of a Pokemon, because this is about as far from mighty as you can get. Mightyena is a travesty, and I know Mightyena is an evolution for a Route 1 Pokemon, but Route 1 Pokemon are not all bad. Linoone has its place with Belly Drum Extreme Speed, Swellow has its value, but Mightyena has a bit of a dissonance with its menacing and pretty elegant visual design and little to offer in-game. Its stats are very bad, 70 in the HP, defense, and speed. Only 60 special defense and special attack, and its highest stat is attack at base 90, which is not high enough to make up for this dreadful stat distribution. Having high attack as a dark type in Gen 3 is also a bit of a problem, because you don't have same type attack bonus on any physical attacks. Dark type attacks are only special in Gen 3, rather a tragedy for Mightyena, isn't it? But Mightyena does have some good qualities that have potential. It has that excellent ability Intimidate, which we were just talking about, lowering attack on switch-in. Now, not a fantastic ability on something So slow and frail, and with a pretty average typing defensively, but still always a good ability to have, even on something this crap. And it also randomly has Heal Bell. I actually don't know the thematical justification for it having Heal Bell, but it does. It is a wild hyena that can cure your status ailments on your team for some reason. It's got the role of a cleric. So these two traits are valuable, and here's what I would do to help Mightyena. Here's how I would give this something to strive for. I would buff Mightyena significantly in its base speed stat, granting it 110 base speed. That might sound drastic, that's a huge buff to its speed. But honestly, would it even be that powerful with such a high speed? Mightyena would have the benefit of outrunning base 100 Pokemon and matching the speed of Gengar. But it would still kind of suck. It would still have a pretty low attack stat, limited physical move pool, no stab. So I think that this having high speed wouldn't even be that outstanding. It would just allow it to outrun more things and therefore have a little bit more to do. Because it having 70 base speed on top of all its other shortcomings is a cruel joke. I think giving it 110 base speed also wouldn't even be that out of place thematically. I mean, the guy carries Heal Bell, that already doesn't make much sense, but this looks like it could be fast. It's a hyena, they're a quick creature, I believe. I mean, Persian has 115 speed, that's very fast. It's faster than Salamence. People have told me that cats have high reaction speed, that's why cat Pokemon have high speed stats. Tell me more about it, I'd love to hear about how reaction time is factored in. Miltank got a high reaction time too, buddy? Does Miltank have a high reaction time? 100 base speed on Miltank? Cow reaction time? Anybody ever heard of cow reaction time? No? Miltank faster than Mightyena? Does that one add up? Explain that with logic. Tell me all about it. Tell me all about how that makes sense. Mightyena having 110 base speed would be fine, and it would actually give it something to do. So it would have the combination of high speed, outrunning a good portion of the metagame, and having Heal Bell and Intimidate, which are valuable utility effects. I would also give Mightyena one more slight buff. I would give Mightyena the move Overheat. Can I explain this with logic? Yes. Here's my argument. Granbull learns Overheat, and that doesn't make sense. Granbull also a dog Pokemon. Mightyena, dog-based Pokemon. Something about dogs have fire powers? There's a logical through line there. There's a logical through line, and you can't prove otherwise. Mightyena gets Overheat now, which wouldn't even be that crazy either, because it only has 60 base special attack. But this would at least be something to hit steel types, to hit Skarmory and Forretress, and because of its high base power, it would make up for the low speed stat on Mightyena. It would actually deal respectable enough damage, and it would be a way to threaten things that destroy Mightyena. With this, I think Mightyena could serve a niche in OU, having an important speed tier and a unique combination of utility and offensive traits. Without being too overpowered or that thematically crazy, I think this would do the trick. Next we have Seviper, another disappointment. Seviper is a pretty cool visual design for a snake Pokemon. Designed as an adversary for Zangoose, who is of course based on a mongoose. Mongoose and snake have a storied rivalry in real life, which they translated into Pokemon. But Seviper is kind of lacking in any great competitive niche, especially in OU. Seviper is a mono-poison type that seems to be designed as a mixed attacker, with 100 attack, 100 special attack, and a impressive move pool. This guy has such coverage options as Earthquake, Flamethrower, Giga Drain, of course Stab, Sludge Bomb. It's a great move pool, and that is the best part of Seviper, but unfortunately Seviper is very frail with only 60 in the defenses, a measly 73 HP, and it's slow as well with only 65 speed, so to take advantage of this move pool is difficult, and there are so many better offensive Pokemon in many formats. It's ranked PU in Gen 3. Seviper has the ability Shed Skin, which is thematically appropriate on a snake Pokemon, but not very good on a Pokemon without any damn defensive stats. This guy has a 33% chance every turn to have its status cured. It's a good ability, it can be, but Seviper is not getting much out of this because it's slow and frail. So what can it really do with this ability? It might be able to take advantage of Rest Shed Skin combo for a lucky early wake up, but it's not that tanky to get much out of Rest. It doesn't want to sit there and be passive. This is an aggressive Pokemon. Seviper needs something a bit better than this. So the first thing I would do for Seviper is change its ability from shed skin to something a bit more useful. I would give it the ability Insomnia. Can I logically explain giving the ability Insomnia to Seviper? Yes, I can. Of course I can. Seviper never sleeps because sleep is the cousin of death. Everybody knows this and you're stupid for even questioning me. Of course Seviper should get Insomnia. Insomnia would grant Seviper a sleep immunity. And this is key because this would allow Seviper to become a switch into Breloom and Smeargle and some other sleep-inflicting enemies, which is great as a poison type. You'd be a great Breloom switch-in because you resist fighting and are immune to being affected by Spore. With a tool like this up your sleeve, the world is your oyster as Seviper. You have more entry points, more opportunities to hit the field and pose a threat, and you stand out from other mixed attackers with sleep immunity, which is an uncommon trait in Gen 3. Scarcely available to anything. I would also give Seviper a speed buff. I keep doing this. I keep giving them speed buffs, but they keep giving these Pokemon such low speed. It's their fault, okay? 65 speed is not enough for Seviper. This is very bad for Seviper. I would give Seviper a modest 90 base speed. I won't go too crazy, even though I could, and I could justify it. People tell me all about how cats have reaction time, and the speed stat in Pokemon factors in reaction time as well as actual objective speed, but no one ever discusses snake reaction time. Why aren't snakes faster? Snakes have very good reaction times. They strike you very quickly. They have some of the highest reaction times. They call me stupid for saying Purugly having a high speed stat is a bit odd, but Seviper having a 65 speed stat, how do you make sense of that one? It just doesn't add up. 90 speed is not enough to make a snake-adjacent Pokemon logical, so I'm having some restraint here, okay? 90 base speed is more than enough for Seviper to pose more of a threat, and with Insomnia it has entry points. It can actually take advantage of its vast offensive move pool. It would still suck, by the way, because Seviper is weak to Psychic and Ground, which are very common. Celebi and Jirachi carry Psychic all the time, and would match up well against Seviper, especially Jirachi. So many things carry ground coverage, and of course Dugtrio would devastate Seviper immediately. So perhaps this Seviper could be used on a Porygon 2 team, or just some other kind of Dug bait team of some description. I think this would be enough to at least allow it to hit the field more often and take advantage of its mixed attacking coverage options. Now next we have Beautifly, and honestly, for this one, I don't think that there's anything you could do to make a Beautifly OU viable unless you buff it to the point of absurdity. Of course, this is a little bug, it's not supposed to be good, but Beautifly is particularly tragic because even among other crappy bugs, this guy does not stand out. Ariados has Insomnia and Agility Pass. Masquerain has Intimidate. Butterfree has Compound Eyes Sleep Powder combo. At least these guys have things that they do. Beautifly doesn't have anything. They gave Beautifly the ability Swarm, which is a terrible fit, granting bonus bug damage if you're on 1/3 or less of your max HP. And Beautifly has only 70 attack and 65 speed. So this is a useless ability. Other bugs, to their credit, have useful abilities like Shield Dust and Intimidate and Compound Eyes. For some reason, they gave Beautifly a terrible one that doesn't even make any sense. So here's what I would do. I would actually not modify Beautifly's stats. It's a little bug. It's supposed to be crappy. But I would give Beautifly a unique and powerful ability, Serene Grace. Beautifly is a serene creature with grace. You can't deny that this would make thematic sense on Beautifly. I think that this would allow it to stand out amongst the other bugs and at least feel a little bit unique. Now, Beautifly actually doesn't even have much in its moveset to take advantage of Serene Grace, which is an ability, of course, that grants double the chance for secondary effects to occur. It has Psychic, which would now have an incredible 20% chance to lower special defense. Very impressive stuff. Also has Shadow Ball, and the most notable of all is Silver Wind, which would have a 20% chance for the stat raises. That's probably the most noteworthy. I would give Beautifly a little bit more to do with Serene Grace. I don't think it would make any thematic sense, unfortunately, to give Beautifly Body Slam. It's a little insect that could scarcely body slam anything. But it might make a bit of sense if you gave Beautifly Dragon Breath, another move with 30% power chance on it that would be buffed to 60% with Serene Grace. Maybe Beautifly can create Dragon Breath. I think that somehow makes more sense than Body Slam, and it would at least give Beautifly a paralysis move to use with Serene Grace. I would also give Beautifly the move Water Pulse. I think Beautifly could shoot some water from his little proboscis, that makes sense. Some nectar from a flower or something. Liquefied, it could do that. And that would give it a move with 40% confusion chance. Might be a little annoying to face, but give Beautifly something, give it a break. If anyone can inflict confusion, let Beautifly do it. So that's what I would do to Beautifly. It would still suck, but it would at least not be completely devoid of anything to do at all. So that's what I would change about Beautifly. And finally we have Relicanth, a Pokemon that is surprisingly famous. People like this Pokemon. I sometimes call this Pokemon boring and people scream at me, so I apologize to Relicanth fans. This is an interesting Pokemon based on the Coelacanth of real life, an ancient being that still exists. Relicanth is a water-rock type, and doesn't look too bad on the surface compared to some of the other Pokemon I've talked about in this video. It actually has some good stats. 100 base HP, 130 base defense. 90 attack is okay too. Its other stats are atrocious, but at least it has some positive things going for it here. But water-rock typing is a big uphill battle, and it certainly doesn't help that Relicanth is massively outclassed by some other water-rock types. Omastar exists and is a better choice. It is a superior offensive threat with a high special attack and a good move pool. It has access to spikes, and it has a similar high defense stat. There's also Kabutops, who has access to the move Knockoff, giving it some value. Relicanth, on the other hand, doesn't really have anything over these other water-rock type Pokemon. Relicanth also has the ability Swift Swim, but it's a garbage ability on Relicanth. Relicanth is incredibly slow and has a non-existent special attack stat. Water-type attacks can only be special in this generation, meaning Relicanth cannot get anything out of the rain. For an offensive boost, and the speed boost is trivial at best. Relicanth also doesn't really have any good utility moves to set it apart from other similar Pokemon. So what would I do to give Relicanth a bit more to live for? I would make a very simple change here, and I would just give Relicanth a different ability. I think its stats are functional enough, and its move pool, while not fantastic, is reasonably okay. I would simply give it a new ability, and my choice for a new ability would be Rough Skin. Sharpedo gets the ability, but Sharpedo is not very good at using it. Relicanth would be much better at abusing Rough Skin. Rough Skin, of course, damages the enemy if they make contact. This would allow Relicanth to take advantage of its great HP and defense to switch onto the field and deal contact damage to certain enemies, like a Snorlax using Body Slam, even Gengar using Ice Punch, because Ice Punch is a contact move. Various Pokemon using Return or Brick Break. Relicanth also has the benefit of being immune to Sandstorm damage, and with Protect for chip healing, this could be a nice way to chip enemies a little bit. It would give Relicanth a unique reason to exist over these other water rock types. And this is far from an overpowered change or anything. Relicanth is still terrible defensively because of its typing, with so many possible and common coverage moves that it's weak to. It's still pretty limited in the moveset department, but with Rough Skin, I think this is not only thematically appropriate for the Pokemon, it looks like it has rough skin, I wouldn't touch it, that looks dangerous, and it would be a buff that leans more into the Pokemon's strengths. There isn't really a viable rough skin Pokemon in Gen 3, and Relicanth would be a good choice. Plus, plenty of physical moves in Gen 3 don't even make contact anyway. A lot of Pokemon use physical hidden power, that doesn't make contact. Earthquake doesn't. Shadow Ball doesn't. So you'd mainly be targeting a very specific pool of moves anyway with rough skin. This actually might be good against Jirachi now that I think about it, because Jirachi uses Body Slam and Fire Punch. If this gets paralyzed, it would make it immune to being burned, and then Jirachi would be punished for spamming Body Slam and Fire Punch, trying to spread status, because Relicanth would be able to chip it down with the contact effect. So there you go, folks, that's how I would fix some of Gen 3's worst Pokemon. In Gen 3, it doesn't take much for you to find a viable role for yourself in OU. If you do something unique, players will find a reason to build around you here and there. Even Roselia has found a place to exist. Lunatone and Solrock, Glalie, etc. Some of these Pokemon are just unfortunate because they are either completely outclassed by other similar options or just don't have anything useful enough to be used. So that was my focus for this video, to give them a slight nudge towards viability, playing to their strengths, playing to their identities, with Very minor changes. What do you think though, folks? Do you like my propositions for how to fix these Pokemon? Do you have your own? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.